We are going live on Facebook and YouTube, all the other platforms as well. So, again, good evening, Art. Good evening, Mark Allen. Thank you for being here. We're now broadcasting live on Facebook and YouTube. It is 8 p.m. I just want to reiterate we had Project Author 1 last Tuesday, 2 p.m. to 5 p.m. People who wanted to learn how to write their first book. They had a book in their hearts, in their minds. They wanted to learn how to write it out. They joined us. That was just last Tuesday, September 8th. And we are having it again this November 11. Not sure yet of the time, but if you want to reserve your slot now, buy your ticket now, just head over to projectauthor.com. That's no space, no dash, just projectauthor.com. So I'm going to start with the questions. As always, the first one to ask, Mr. Patrick Miguel. What is one important thing people do not know about you that they should? I guess this is a personal question. Well, I want to share to the entire world that I'm a born-again Christian, that I am happy where I am right now. I'm a contented man, and that is because of my relationship with our one true Maker, Creator, Savior, and Lord Jesus Christ. I think that is one thing about me that not a lot of people may know, especially people tuning in, but I think that they should know that, and it is worth their life. It is worth the entire life, actually, to know this truth. We have a question from Cedric Choa. If you didn't have SEO Hacker right now, would there be another business industry that you would be venturing into? I guess I would never know because I have SEO Hacker right now. But one thing that I'm excited about right now, I'm looking into a hobby sort of kind of business. And that is, if you see the aquarium tanks behind me, I'm looking at a business related to that right now because it is something that I am, you could say, quite obsessed about. Just building, it's an art, right? So when you build a fish tank with a good scape, we call it an aquascape. There is an art to it, and I guess being stuck at home, that's something that I really felt like doing, just working with my hands and doing something, creating something. So maybe that would be one business that I would get into. But since I have SEO Hacker, I would never really know. But right now, that's what I'm looking into. What advice would you give to fresh college graduates? Again, from Cedric, what advice would you give to fresh college graduates who are aspiring entrepreneurs with consideration to the fact that we're in the middle of a pandemic? Well, if you're a fresh college graduate and you want to be an entrepreneur, there is no real reason why you shouldn't be. Because right now the market is super disrupted, and with disruptions come opportunities, because suddenly the way things worked doesn't work as well anymore. It doesn't work at all. And there are a lot of ways that you could change that. There are a lot of ways to go around that. There are solutions that you could provide, but it does take a lot of drive. It does take a lot of passion, the willingness to suffer for something, to sacrifice for something. It takes a lot of that to be an entrepreneur, whether you're a fresh grad or whether you're in your 20s, 30s, 40s, maybe even 50s, because there are people in their 50s who start businesses and they're entrepreneurs as well. So it doesn't matter what age you are in. It doesn't matter if you're a fresh grad. What matters is, can you see those new roadblocks, those disruptions in the market, and can you make solutions out of them that people are willing to pay for? Because if there is a demand in the market, such as, for example, e-commerce became a big hit. Why? Because people can't go out to the places where they used to buy stuff. Groceries, wet market, yun na lang eh. Groceries, wet market, it is not the same. when you go to the groceries and the wet market, I don't know about you guys, but here in BF Parañaque, medyo mahirap because we had to have our Q pass, and there's some sort of color coding with the traffic in the wet market. Now you can only go every Tuesdays or every Wednesdays, something like that. And so there's a lot of, guess what, online groceries that popped up, and they made it easier for people to just order what they needed from the groceries and the wet market online. Cloud kitchens started popping up because wala eh, sarado yung mga restaurants eh. So, saan ka kakain? You still have that taste for eating out. You still want to eat out. You still want to order good food, or maybe you find it difficult cooking at home. Maybe maybe no one cooks at home. Then how are you going to eat? Or you only know a couple of dishes. Then cloud kitchens became a boom, and suddenly people start ordering a lot from these cloud kitchens. So again, even if you're a fresh graduate, as long as you have the drive, the passion, the willingness to sacrifice and suffer for these things, you will be able to create a business out of it, start a business out of it, and become an entrepreneur. I think that the pandemic is one of the perfect storms actually to start your own entrepreneurship journey. It is difficult, but even if we weren't in a pandemic, entrepreneurship is still difficult. There is no way to getting around it. So I think this pandemic is the perfect storm for you to start your own business actually. We have a question. Oh, by the way, and if you have questions, please go to the link right there from the chon.c/discord. You can ask questions from the Ask Anything channel. That's where you put your questions. Don't put it in on Facebook. Don't put it on YouTube, because I'm only accepting questions from Discord. Good evening, Mr. Albert Remo. Thank you for being here and tuning in tonight. Appreciate it. We have a question from Jazz. What is the one thing you really regret not knowing before you start your business? A lot, but I regret a lot of stuff. But then again, I had to learn it the hard way. There really was no getting around to not knowing these things, because I didn't know that I didn't know it. Ba? Pag di mo alam, hindi mo pala alam yun, there's really no way for you to learn that during that time. I just had to go through a lot of experiences, make a lot of mistakes, and those mistakes helped me to learn the solution to these problems. One of these problems would be my hiring process. I'm a horrible hire. I cannot hire people. I cannot hire the right people because I have a problem and I have a gift, and that is I trust people too much. When I trust people too much, I'm the type of entrepreneur who really does not micromanage, and I don't like micromanaging. I just tell you, these are your KPIs. This is what I expect. However you want to do it, up to you. And so I trust people to do the work. And when I'm being put in the interview panel, it's difficult for me because people say stuff in the interview process. They say a lot of stuff to get the job and to get a better pay, starting pay. And so when I trust people too much, ang nangyayari, I tend to believe that's the stuff that people say. My intuition for people not really saying the right things or the real things behind their words is weak. I cannot read people, especially interviewees, that well. Plus, there's a bias. Because I need the person already. I need that position to be filled already as an entrepreneur. So there is that bias that kailangan ko na kasi ng hire. Kailangan ko na kasi ng tao dito eh. So, naghanap talaga ako, medyo nagmamadali. The problem with that is if you make the wrong hire, not only will you have even more problems to deal with, na ikaw din mag-aayos. So, same lang, di ba? Sana hindi ka na lang nag-hire ng tao kasi gumawa pa sila ng problema because new hires, they would have to learn the ropes. They would really make mistakes. Ganun talaga eh. Unless you hire a seasoned veteran who's the thought leader or the leading expert or specialist in that field, which is super expensive naman pag ganun yung gagawin mo, then the new hire will really make mistakes. The problem is the mistakes should end somewhere because it should be evaluated and taken into experience by the person. If they do not evaluate that mistake, they don't evaluate the experience, ang mangyayari, magiging repeated mistakes siya. Repeated mistakes are really bad because the person will keep on costing you money as the entrepreneur, and then it will also lead to what we call fatal mistakes. Fatal mistakes are mistakes that, when committed, you lose income. In our case, we lose a client or we lose two clients. Lala nun. Kasi, for example, you send the wrong report to the wrong client, tapos they don't like each other pa, this client and that client, nako, obviously you will lose a client, right? So that's an example of a fatal mistake, sending the wrong report to the wrong client, especially if they don't like each other. You're going to get fired for that. And we don't like that. And repeated mistakes lead to fatal mistakes. So I definitely think that one of the biggest things that I regret not knowing is how to hire properly. Now we have a 6 step hiring process, and of course, it's the pandemic, lockdowns. So, what we did, we transitioned the 6 step hiring process to digital. Dati kasi people would go to the office, first interview, second interview, all the way hanggang sixth interview, which is the final interview is me, yours truly. So babalik-balik sila na office, but now it's just digital. We had to figure out how we're going to still be able to get the best people in, meaning people who really want to work and play with SEO Hacker. Not just people who are looking for a 15-30 pay, for a good 15-30 pay and fun. We don't like people like that. We want people talaga na who want to work with us, who put in the research of who we are, who looked into what we're doing as a company, who knows probably who I am and knows that I'm, pretty much everything about me kasi online naman, nandiyan naman yung website ko. People can know what I'm doing. So if the person or the new hire does not know anything about me and yung pangalan ko nasa website naman ng SEO Hacker, nakapaskil naman dun na ako yung CEO and my website is linked from there, if the person doesn't know me, that's already a bad sign that the person may be just looking for a job, a job, which is 15-30 pay. And so we usually don't accept those people. We accept people who really put in the effort because they really want to work and play for SEO Hacker. Now, Lizette, thank you for your question. Please join us in the Discord channel. I will be able to answer that if you are in the channel. Again, I only answer questions in the Discord channel. The link is here from thechan.c/Discord. I like your question, but you have to post it on the Discord channel because that way you're going to be part of the community and we will be able to engage with you better. All right. Jazz, I hope I answered that question. Next question again would be from Patrick Miguel. What are the top 5 skills you would advise a newly graduate to learn to thrive in the future, to be successful? First skill, communication. Communication is super important. How you communicate with people, will you be able to engage them? And communication doesn't mean talking. It doesn't mean speaking. It doesn't mean na nagsasalita ka lang on stage or nagta-type ka lang, marunong ka mag-chat, marunong ka mag-formulate ng words. That's not communication. You know how communication starts? By listening. You have to learn the art of listening. I know that you guys know I have the podcast Leadership Stack, and we're on Spotify. We have a lot of episodes already. If you guys are wondering what makes a really good episode, it's when I listen to the people I am interviewing. Most of the time, I have guests, and most of my questions actually stem from them saying something brilliant in their answers, and me taking that answer and formulating another question from that. And hindi mo kaya gawin yon if you don't have the ability to listen well. So great communication is key. One of the key skills for you to be successful in life, not just as an entrepreneur, maybe even as an employee. But you need to learn how to listen first. That's the key to great communication. If you make the other person feel like, oh, this guy really understands me, then that person would be more open to listen to you as well. And great communication happens in between. So, knowing the words to say, knowing how to say it, hand gestures, body language, facial expressions, these are all secondary, important but secondary. First thing you need to do is to listen. And how you show someone you're listening is you look them in the eye, you keep quiet, don't comment, and then you mirror whatever it is that they say. It could be, did you mean, and then you paraphrase it in your own words. That will tell them that you really listen to them. It's difficult for me to list the top 5 skills, no? Ang dami nito, but definitely communication is at the top of my list. Second thing that you need to learn to thrive in the future and to be successful, I think, is sales. Nothing happens until someone sells something. That quote is attributed to Henry Ford. Anong sabihin nun? Ulitin natin. Nothing happens until someone sells something. The world doesn't revolve. The world doesn't go round until someone sells something. For example, what have I sold you guys here? I've sold you the idea that if you tune in, you're going to get something out of it. And that's what made you act and finally tune in. If a parent wants their child to eat veggies, the parent has to sell the child that vegetables are good for them. However, they want to make the product good, taste good, nasa sa kanila na yon. If you want to add more seasoning to the vegetable, nasa sayo na yon. Or if you want to force the child to do it, but you have to sell it to the child that this is good for you, why don't you try it out? Nothing happens until someone sells something. And sales is one of the oldest skills in history. It is one of the oldest professions in history, being a salesperson. You cannot be successful if you cannot sell. Even if you're not an entrepreneur, you may be a product person or an inventor, you still have to learn to sell your invention to someone who will invest in it and make it improve and iterate it until it is market ready. So, whether you are a businessman, an employee, an inventor, an idealist, you have to learn how to sell. If you don't know how to sell, success will be ever elusive. Mahirap makahanap ng success sa buhay pag di ka marunong magbenta. Ang hirap nung tanong, no? Kasi top 5 skills. Usually, yung dalawa lang yung sinasabi ko, no? Communication and sales. What would be the third one? Maybe the third one would be the ability to accept criticism. The ability to accept criticism. In short, humility. It's hard to hear people say bad stuff about you. Things that you need to change. That's how it is as human beings. Mahirap talaga eh. But if you keep rejecting that, the chances of you improving is very small. Because the easiest way for you to know your weaknesses and blind spots is usually from how other people see you. Kaya nga siya blind spots eh. Because you don't know. You don't see it. You don't see that this is how I talk. This is how I correct others. This is how I do things. And there may be some things that are wrong in that, but you don't see it because you're blind to it. And the easiest and best way to see it is when other people correct you. But if you're not humble enough to accept correction, all you're going to be doing is defending yourself. And it's tough when it becomes a defense party. Diba? You have to learn to accept it and make solutions to change. That it will still be your blind spot. It will still be your weakness. So mahirapan ka talagang i-improve yon. It's easier to improve strengths than to improve weaknesses. But you have to still improve that nonetheless, at least to a certain level where it's acceptable to a lot of other people. So people who cannot accept correction, what happens to them? They don't get along well with other people because they don't improve. But people who are able to accept correction and improve, those are people who get ahead because they're likable. The fourth skill that you need to be successful in the future is to delay gratification. You have to learn how to delay gratification. You cannot do things now when you want it, when you feel like it. Mahirap yon. The idea of pay now so that you can play later is real. The idea of play now but you will have to pay later is also real. If you keep playing now, and the now is usually when you're younger, when you have more energy, when you can network better, and you have to pay later, what happens is usually you end up poor. Success is very, very hard to find if you're a play now, pay later person. But if you're a pay now, play later person, you put in the grind, the hard work, the hustle because you're younger. You can endure more. You can go the distance more. Then the pay later would be super small na. The play later would be very easy enough for you. You can play a lot because you paid now. Yeah, it's true that you're older when you get to play, but wala ka ng stress, wala ka ng masyadong iniisip because you paid it now eh. So I'll tell you guys a story. When I was younger and I was in college, I was computing the potential salary that I would get in my first few jobs, probably. I also projected that maybe I'd get promoted in X number of years, would get this much salary with the taxes and everything. Life did not look very great. In fact, it looked bleak. Kasi if when I computed it, maybe I'd get to buy my first car at 35, 38. Maybe I'd get to buy my first house at 45. I'm a house and lot type of guy. I don't really like condos and townhouses because I grew up in house and lot. And maybe I would also be able to get married somewhere in my late 30s just because I don't have the money to do it. So, what I did was pay now and play later during that time because my startup years, I would work 16-hour days pretty much non-stop. So, medyo napabayaan ko yung sarili ko, yung katawan ko during that time. But now, 10 years later, I'm 32. Just turned 32 last Sunday, thank God. 10 years later, I'm able to achieve a level of success that would only be in my wildest dreams. At 25, I got married. I was able to buy my first car at 23. I was able to buy my first house and lot and pay for it by 31. So these things for me are a dream. In fact, for me, it's still surreal. No, hindi ka pani-paniwala in Tagalog yung mga na-achieve kong mga bagay. And that's because I paid during that time. I learned how to pay now and play later because you have to pay. Whatever the case is, whatever you choose, you'd have to pay. It's either you pay now and play later or play now and pay later. And playing now and paying later is gonna ruin your life and you're gonna end up poor. So the fourth thing you need is to delay gratification. Last thing you need, the fifth thing for a newly graduate to learn to thrive in the future, to be successful. And you have to let me say this because I'm a man of faith, I'm a born again Christian. I think one of the skills that you need would be to learn to have a daily relationship with God. That is one of the secrets that I always say, um, is right in front of you, and I keep saying it, but people don't follow it. It's mind blowing, but really, that is something that is super necessary for life. There are a lot of promises in the Bible that talk about money and talk about success. If you read the book of Proverbs, if you don't know where Proverbs is, nasa gitna yun ng Bible. No, katabi siya ng Psalms. Marami doon it talks about money, success, debt, and talks about personal finance as well. So if you read the Bible, if you learn to have a relationship with God, or even if you just read the Bible, the book of Proverbs, you actually learn a lot of things. And these things will help you to succeed in life. So for me, that is a skill. I would consider it a skill just because not a lot of people do it. Just because not a lot of people invest time in that. They would invest time and money and effort in their personal growth, in their public speaking, in their personal finance management, in their insurance, but they don't invest in their spirit. They don't invest in their soul, which I think is a very real part of us and is something that everyone should invest in. Another question: what are the best ways to fund a startup business? From Patrick Miguel. Best ways to fund a startup business. I'm going to be a bit biased here just because I funded it bootstrap. When I say bootstrap, it means I funded it with my savings. And during that time, believe it or not, my savings, 1,300 pesos. That's it. I know that there's a lot of hype that says you have to fund it by an investor. Get an angel investor to seed fund your idea. Get a VC to do a Series A, and all of these funding methods for your startup ideas. I don't like the idea kasi of other people kind of dictating to you that you need to have this much returns by this year. And getting investors kasi ganun yun mangyayari. There's no way na hindi yun mangyayari because they want their money back so that they can invest again to other opportunities. So if you get investors to come in, the chances of you being driven by another person in your business is pretty high. It's pretty high. And for me, one of the reasons I became an entrepreneur is because I want to do what I want to do and decide fast in the things that I have to decide on when it comes to my business and how we operate and how we make money. So I would say the best way to fund it from your savings. That's the least amount of risk in terms of your decision making capability. That's also the least amount of risk in the sense of not incurring debt. Kasi kung inutang nyo yun sa bangko or sa friends and family, may interest kayong babayaran. E pag nalugi yun, babayaran nyo pa rin yung interest kahit anong mangyari. Saan nyo na kukunin yung pambabayad nyo? Eh nalugi nga yung business. So now, you have to sell assets, you have to work a day job and slave for paying the interest. So for me, that's too risky. What I would do na lang is fund it from bootstrap, no, your own savings. Another question from Cedric Choa. What are common mistakes or flaws done by someone who aspires to be an entrepreneur? Number one mistake: they do not protect their cash flow. They do not protect their cash flow. It could be for various reasons, but usually it is for it stems from behavior. You make your first sale and it's big and you think, oh, okay na ako kasi ang laki ng kinita ko ngayon. So what you do with the profit, manlilibre ka, mambo-blow out ka, or you buy the first thing that you wanted for a long time. And instead of investing that money again to the business so that it can grow more, you lost your profits and you are now cash flow neutral or maybe even cash flow negative. Kung umutang ka pa sa negosyo mo, you spent more than the profit you made, then you're gonna be eating your own business. You're gonna be eating the goose that lays the golden egg, and that's not good. So I think that 9 out of 10 businesses fail not because of the market, not because of the economy, not because of the government or any other external factors. I think 9 out of 10 businesses fail because of behavior. The entrepreneur did not protect his or her cash flow and did not invest in himself or herself, knowing things on how to protect the business and grow the business. Another way that cash flow would not be protected is nagpapautang ka more than you can afford. So when you sell something in your business, my terms usually 30 days, 90 days. No. If you're retail, yeah, you get the money right away, and that's good. But if you're not retail, usually there's terms. And if you keep on lending money and not collecting, then technically you're cash flow negative. Literally, actually, you're cash flow negative. That is one way that you're not protecting cash flow, and that will drive your business to the ground. So I think that is one other common flaw or mistake by new entrepreneurs. I'm gonna give chance for other people who are asking questions. So we have one from Flo. Best advice for a tech startup founder. Best advice: always be at the edge of your game. Always be cutting edge. Technology, it's a fast-paced game. If you're not reading, if you're not researching, and you're not experimenting, because you don't take these reading materials, you don't take all of these new things that are rolled out at face value. You have to experiment on your own, inspect what is true, so that you know what to expect out of it when you apply it or implement it in your business, either as a new product or service. So always be at the cutting edge. If you're a tech startup founder, make sure that you are there at the forefront. And if you can be the best in that field, I suggest do your best to be the best because it pays to be number one. It pays to be number one. If you search for SEO Philippines, SEO Hackers ranking number one or number two, we're somewhere up there. It does pay to rank for that keyword because it is a very important keyword in my industry. And if you can do that for your market in an honest way, because SEO Hacker, we did it white hat, we have an all ethical approach. That's why we get to keep our rankings long term. If you do it with integrity, if you can get number one and stay number one with integrity, with good conviction, that pays. So if you're a tech startup founder, definitely go for that. I have a question from Mark Allen. I'm not sure how to pronounce your surname. Height? Hello, I am a student, grade 8, 13 years old. Wow, welcome to the show. You're so young. And I'm planning to buy and sell things so I can start my future business plan. We have a young entrepreneur here, just straight fresh in his teenage years. It's a food business, maybe even try stocks, mutual funds. Is this buy sell thing advisable or should I try a different or maybe even better source of income since I'm still doing my studies? Mark, buying and selling stuff, especially if the demand is there, you're saying food business, there's demand in the food business. I think that is really good. If not for the profit, for your experience. You're young. You can afford to lose some time, money, and effort. Okay lang. Bata ka pa eh. You can recover that. Plus, again, if you're going to the food business right now, there is not a big chance that you will fail. Because a lot of people are actually buying food from home, ordering food online. So it's actually one of the industries that work right now. So I suggest for you to try it out. If you want to buy and sell, do it small first. Or Actually, kahit wag ka munang bumili, wag ka munang mag-inventaryo eh. Sell it first. Sell it in the places that you plan to sell it in. Could be a Facebook group, could be a Facebook page. I don't know where you plan to sell the food in, but try to sell it first kahit di mo pa binibili. Since you're planning buy and sell naman. And if you're able to sell some, then buy the inventory, ship it out, sell it. You have running business. I don't think there's a downside to this because hindi mo naman sinabi that you plan to do wholesale, hindi mo naman sinabi you plan to inject X amount of capital. I think you can start small and then you iterate from there. But I suggest don't be attracted to the money, especially now that you're 13 years old. Do not let the money get into your head. What you should be after is the experience, that you learn how to do it, that you learn how to sell, you learn how to negotiate. Because there are some people who will ask you, tawad, discount. You have to learn how to negotiate. That for me is more valuable to you than making a profit. Because you are young, these things that you will learn will serve you in whatever other future ventures that you may have. Food business, great now because we're locked down, we're in a pandemic. Might not be great when we're back to normal or whatever that future looks like. But the things that you will learn, like selling and negotiating, that will always remain in your head. And you will always be able to use that in whatever business you get into. From Mr. RJ Legaspi, I'm 23-year-old. Is it too late to study a second course or degree? It's never too late. That's my opinion. Whether you're 40, 50, doesn't matter. It's never too late for you to study a second degree or to get a master's degree. But if you're asking me about is it okay if I study while starting up a business, I would advise against that because that would be very difficult. Matrabaho yon. And it will take a lot of time away from your studies or vice versa. Your studies would take away a lot of time from your startup business. Remember, when you have a startup business, it's like a newborn baby. You have to give it a lot of time, a lot of attention. You have to make sure that you're present, that you inspect things. You have to make sure that cash flow is positive, that it's the baby is not bleeding out, right? When expenses is greater than revenue, we call that bleeding in business. So you have to protect your baby. So if you're also studying a second course at the same time starting up, I think that is not a good idea. Also from RJ Legaspi, thoughts about generalist and specialist. Not sure. I'm not entirely sure what you're trying to ask here, but a generalist would be someone who is a jack of all trades, knows a lot of stuff about pretty much a lot of things. And a specialist would be someone who knows something deeply. In my opinion, if you desire to be successful, definitely go for the specialist route, especially if it is a niche market. So SEO, when I started out, not a lot of people knew about it. In fact, way back 2009, 2010, when I say SEO, people would ask me, ano yun? Ano yung SEO? Ano ba nagagawa niyan? Legit ba yan? Right? And I have to explain to them. Sometimes they ask me to go to their office just to explain what SEO is. Akala ko kukuha na sila ng SEO pero ipapa-explain lang pala sa akin. Madalas-dalas yon. So it is a niche market and it paid off when I specialized in it. Because now, when you're in the services industry, especially in the tech industry like me, and I'm a services tech industry, meron kasing product tech industry. I'm in the services tech industry. People pay you for what you know and how well you're able to execute. So for me, if you want to be successful, definitely specialist, not generalist. We have a question from Rap. What can you say about this? When someone decides to become a very rich person, the poor person inside of him or her has to die. When someone wants to become an entrepreneur, the employee inside of him or her has to die. I don't agree because even if I only had 5 months as an employee working for Hewlett Packard, That experience, I take it with me. It did not die because I learned how to think like an employee, and I learned how it is to be an employee. I think if I didn't go through that, I would be a very different entrepreneur right now. I would lead differently, I would delegate differently, manage differently, because I can only see things from one perspective. And that would make me closed minded to a lot of people. So I don't think it has to die. I think that you take it with you and you learn from it. I think all experience is valuable if you see it, if you evaluate it, diba? And you see it in a good light. I think all experience is valuable. It doesn't have to be thrown out because that's pretty much what the question is trying to say. If it has to die, you throw it out. The poor person inside of you has to die if you decide to become a very rich person. You can aspire to be a rich person, but you cannot decide, just decide to be a rich person. So I aspired to be also a successful person way back when, but I still remember the times when I would commute from BF Parañaque, where I live and grew up, all the way to Cubao, where my wife lives before. So noon nanliligaw po ako, wala po akong kotse noon. I would take the tricycle, the jeep, the bus, the MRT, and then another jeep, and then walk some ways. So limang sakay po papunta sa ex-girlfriend ko, asawa ko na siya ngayon. But, yun, nagko-commute ako, limang sakay, tapos pauwi, ganun din, limang sakay din. And then, lakad pa. And usually, syempre, dahil nagde-date pa kami noon, ano na, gabing-gabi na ako uwi kasi sayang yung commute ko eh. Pagod mag-commute, limang sakay eh. So usually ang uwian ko nun mga 11 p.m., 10 p.m. or 12 midnight bago ko uwi. Marami ng snatcher, tsaka marami ng holdupper. So prayer lang talaga, no? You pray, and I dressed very very normally during that time, up until now actually. When you see me, I dress simply lang, usually t-shirt, shorts, maybe slacks, that's it. And the reason behind that is because I would say I was quite poor before. I wasn't really rich. I would commute, I didn't have a car. I would eat skyflakes for lunch and dinner, and I was super thin because skyflakes doesn't have any nutritional value. So I learned to be poor. That part of me hasn't died. I take it with me because I appreciate everything that I have now. And one of the questions in my first Leadership Stack Live was actually, how do you stay motivated? And the answer to that, be grateful. Be thankful for what you have. Have a spirit of gratitude. That's how you stay motivated. Motivational speakers, external yan eh. But if you want to stay motivated internally, have a spirit of gratitude. Be thankful for where you are. Be contented. And I would say the poor Sean inside of me hasn't died. It's because of that poor me that I appreciate where I am now. So definitely do not throw that away. That poor person doesn't have to die because that poor person will shape your perspective, will shape your mind, and will make you a better person holistically. Any recommended books for entrepreneurship or business from Monster Wings? This question is from Monster Wings. Um, Entrepreneurship, Jim Collins' books is really good. So he has Built to Last, Good to Great. Personally, I really love Good to Great. I also recently published a book on Amazon. It costs $5.19, cheaper than a bowl of ramen, actually. Um, and the title of my book is 50x Your Business. I haven't promoted it heavily yet because I'm still waiting for some things. Pero nasa Amazon na siya, published na siya. Pwede nyo na siyang bilhin at basahin. The title is 50x Your Business because the entire book is all about how I grew SEO Hacker from a one-man team with a capital of 1,300 pesos to what it is now. 10 years fast forward, we're a 50-man team, and the processes that I have, the 6 step hiring process that we have, it's all there. The company culture, how we built our company culture, and all the way hanggang sa in-update ko siya kasi natapos ko siya within the pandemic So there is a chapter there that talks about how to make remote work for you and your team. So I outlined there how we do remote work as well right now and how it works for us and how you can also do that for your own team or your own company. So I know it's a little I'm a little bit cheating because I recommended my own book, but I wouldn't recommend it if it sucks because I think you would really learn from 50x your business. So the book again is 50x your business by Shansi. It's in Amazon. And shout outs muna tayo, no? Si my friend who is a billionaire here in the Philippines, Mr. Marvin Germo, is tuning in. Master Marvin, thanks for tuning in. Idol kita. I just hope to be like you. No? Big fan of Marvin Germo. We have Lizette Tan. Lizette, we're waiting for you in Discord. Please post your question here. RV Carla, watching from Twitch. Thank you for being here. Shout out to you. All right. Those are our shout outs. And for everyone else who hasn't left a comment but you're watching, thank you for being here. Appreciate you being here. And I hope that the answers have been useful to you so far. This is going to be a recording and we're going to be publishing it in the Leadership Stack podcast. Although baka mga December na siya ma-publish kasi marami kaming nakalinya para sa inyo. Most of them I have guests from all over the world and you would learn a lot from them as I did. On to the next question. What is the importance? This is from Patrick Miguel. What is the importance of branding for you? Tips on how to establish it. What is your brand? Okay. Branding is important because that is how people perceive you and know you as a company. I remember I talked about this. The most important thing in branding is consistency. You're consistent with what you do, with how you show yourself to the outside world. If you remember Nike, and I ask you what's their logo and what's their tagline, madali lang sagutin. It's the check mark, and the tagline is just do it. It has been consistent, consistent, consistent. Over the years, it's the same. But I'm going to name Adidas though. Now I know that the logo might be the same, but the tagline I don't really remember. You might not remember, but the last tagline I remember that they made that was really good is impossible is nothing. Problem, iba na yung tagline nila ngayon. Yung consistency wala dun eh. That's what I think branding should be all about. You have to be consistent. If you're not consistent, you will have weak branding. And one of the biggest advantages of branding is if you have good branding, you can demand the price. Honestly, how much should sneakers cost? It should not cost a lot. And yet, Nike sells it for a lot. Ang laki ng patong nila. And they're making a lot of money out of it. They're even listed in the stock exchange in the US. So, same with Adidas. Even if they're not that consistent with their tagline, they still have pretty good branding. They're also listed in the US stock exchange, which means they have billions in market cap. And one of their sneakers cost a lot. And that really is just because of branding. Yeah, they have good products, they have good sneakers, but a lot of companies also have good sneakers without that kind of branding, and they're selling for a much cheaper price. So, branding is important because you can demand price. Same with SEO Hacker. I think we have pretty good branding, so we demand price. And a lot of our competitors follow our pricing model in our website. That's because of, again, good branding. So it is worth investing in your brand. Be consistent. All right, we have. I'm gonna choose another question by Cedric. Do you think emotional quotient is more important than intellectual? Okay, EQ is more important than IQ in doing business. I think so. I think so. I don't think my IQ is high. First and foremost, I don't think my EQ is high either. But I think EQ is more important than IQ. And that's because IQ is a test of what you know, not really of how you use what you know, but just what you know. That's IQ. EQ is more of how you use your understanding of other people. And that for me is super important because when you deal with business, you deal with people. There is no business that is not a people business. All businesses are affected by people. And people are a big factor when you do business. So EQ, knowing how to deal with them, knowing how to understand them, and communication as well, and sales, which are the two most important skills that I tackled earlier, that's affected by EQ. So I think EQ is a lot more important than IQ in business. Next question. Again, if you have questions, please tune into Discord. We have the link right here. Yeah, there you go. From the chan.c/Discord, you can ask your questions there. So, before I move on with other questions, I just want to share that we are having Project Author again this November 11. If you're a person who wants to write your book, maybe there's a book in your heart or in your mind, and you finally want to be able to write it out. It's the pandemic. You're probably spending a lot of time at home and you want to learn how to write your book and have it published. Please do join us. The link is projectauthor.com. That's just PROJECTAUTHEAUTHOR, projectauthor.com. And you will be able to go to the website where you can purchase your ticket and join us this November 11th. Okay. What questions do we have? Adversity quotient. Patrick, I'm not entirely um, familiar with adversity quotient, but what I do understand about it is the ability to take on criticism and the ability to stand up again and move forward after failing. So I think both is very, very important. As mentioned earlier, humility is one of the things that actually that's one of the things that we look for in a hire in SEO hacker. We follow Patrick Lencioni's 3 things to look for in a good hire. That's humble, hungry, and smart. When Patrick Lencioni says humble, that means someone who can take criticism, who can take correction and improve. Hungry is for the word hungry is measuring how much drive they have to do the work, how much ambition they have to be a part of your team and be able to do the work excellently. And finally, smart is more of EQ. How smart are they in understanding other people? How smart are they in relating with other people and communicating with them? So it's not IQ smart, it's EQ smart. So that's it. Now, Patrick Lencioni, humble, hungry, smart. That's what they look for in a hire. That's also something that we look for in SEO Hacker whenever we have to hire someone. And how we're able to look for these things is to ask questions. So, how do you know someone's humble? You ask them, what's the biggest mistake you've done in your past job? You ask them, what's the reason why you left? You ask them, what is the biggest thing that disappointed your leaders in your last company? If they're humble, they will tell you the story. And then you have to probe. You cannot take things at face value. You have to ask the same question in a different trouser. What that means is when you ask them, is there something that disappointed your leader or your direct leader or direct report during your tenure in your past company. And so they tell the story. And then you ask, so what did you do to fix that? And then you ask, so what did these people say about you? Because they can make stories up, right? Pwede silang mag-imbento. But if you keep on asking these probing questions, pretty much the same question, just asked in a different way, or asked in a deeper way, then they'd have to tell you the story. And if there's inconsistency, you know that this person is not really that humble. Because if they were, they would tell you the entire thing. They would have the integrity to tell you the entire thing. How we measure hungry is we try to figure out if the person really did his or her research. Do they know things about us or not? Do do they are they from a rich background or not? Are they here for just a couple of months and then will they leave? Will they just try to learn from us, make us a stepping stone? Because we cannot grow with people who are mercenaries. We cannot grow with people who are just going to make us stepping stones. It can be a good trade, 6 months of work, 6 months of this amount of salary. It could be a good trade in some cases, but most cases we'd rather hire someone who's going to play and work with us long term. And that means they have to be hungry enough. So usually we check the person's background, their what does their parents do? Are their parents working or are they retired? Do they have their kid? Are they married? Do they have kids? Are there people depending on them? How hungry is this person? Will this person choose their job or pick jobs or say hindi ko trabaho yan or that's not my job? Will this person have a winning attitude, a winning drive? Because usually in basketball, the center player does not tell the point guard, di ko trabaho mag-dribble ng bola. And vice versa, the point guard doesn't tell the center player, it's not my job to rebound the ball. Why? Because they play to win. If you play to win, you're not going to tell other people in your team, that's not my job. So people who are not hungry enough will say, that's not my job. Somewhere in their tenure with you. Medyo naubusan na ako, no? And smart, lastly, we see smart easier because for me, if you cannot look me straight in the eye during the interview, if you don't know how to answer my questions during the interview, or if you don't have questions after all the interviews and I ask you, do you have questions for me? If you don't have questions, usually I consider that as not being smart enough because you should have questions, right? For me, for the company, because you don't know so much about us and you should know, you should be curious enough to be able to relate with us better. You should ask questions. So that's another thing that I'm looking at whenever I interview someone. But again, I'm not really a great person to interview people because I trust people too much. So we make them go through the 6-step hiring process, starting from our HR and then a series of tests, and then the team leader of the position they're applying for, and then my wife, and then me. Why do I ask my wife to interview them? Is because my wife is a fantastic interviewer. She is a psychology graduate and she's a cum laude, and really she just reads people really good. And I couldn't read people anywhere as good as she does. So kung pasado na sa kanya, pasado na rin sa akin. Kung bagsak sa kanya, hindi na dumadaan sa akin yon. So that is how we do the interview process now. Very different. All right. We have an interesting question. And this is the last question because we have 2 minutes. From Rap. I have a question. What if I'm already rich? What advice do you have for me? Well, Rap, if you're already rich, here's one good advice. You remember that story where there is a rich man who approached Jesus and said, "Good teacher, what must I do to inherit eternal life?" And Jesus said, "Do you follow the Ten Commandments?" And the rich man said, "Yes, I do." And he said, "Go sell all," Jesus said, "Sell all of your possessions and come follow me. Sell all your possessions, give the proceeds to the poor, and come follow me." Now, I'm not going to tell you to sell all of your possessions and give it all to the poor, but I'm going to tell you that if you're already rich, one thing that you can do is to pay it forward. How you pay it forward? You give to God 10% because He demands that. That is called a tithe, or actually, tithe means tenth, literally. So you give 10% to God of what you make. You save whatever percent you want to save because you're already rich, and then you give to charities, you give to people who are in need, and you help them. You go there, you be the one to give them what they need. I think that is something that a lot of people who are blessed to have riches should do. Maybe you support missionaries, support pastors every month. That is something that you can do because right now there are a lot of pastors and missionaries who really need your support. So, one thing that I decided during the pandemic, even if we were losing clients and some clients were pausing our contracts, I decided to still support the missionaries I'm supporting and the pastors I'm supporting. And why I did that is because I know they need it more during this time. And I always have a kind of a mantra that I take with me, and that is if you're not giving until it hurts, then you're not giving enough. And it is during that time when you're giving till it hurts that God will honor it. Because what is it? What credit is it to you if you give out of your riches and comfort? But God will credit it to you when you give out of your pain, out of your discomfort. So I would rather do that and have God honor me and have God bless me back because I do believe that God will bless me back and honor that if I do it for Him. So that is one advice that I'm going to be giving you, Rap. Thank you for that question. And that is the last one. It is 9 p.m., 9:01 p.m. actually. Thank you so much for tuning in. This is every Thursday night at 8 p.m. I'll be doing this Leadership Stack live. If you have questions, business questions, leadership, entrepreneurship, just go to the Discord channel. This is the link from dachon.c/Discord. Join our community, post your questions there, and I will be answering them every 8 p.m. Thursday nights. Thank you guys, and good night.